Hello, friends. I have a very special friend, Noor, with me. She is so beautiful. She is a mom of two little girls, Amelia, who's 3, and Alina, who's 1.5. I hope I got that right? And she is expecting her third. So she's about to have 3 kiddos, 3 and under. Superwoman. Noor, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Actually, first, let me share. She's had 2 unmedicated, intervention-free hospital births. Is that correct?
Yes, with a little asterisk, but I'll get into that.
Okay.
So,
And
but yeah.
then, so today I just really wanted her to share like what she's learned, how her faith has shaped her experiences, like what she's praying over this next birth and all of that. But can you kind of like, if you were to sit down across the, coffee table from us and say, hey, my name is, what would be some of the first things that you would share about yourself?
So hi, my name is Noor. I live in Sonoma County, just about an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I like always preface with, "Oh, I'm just a mom," right? It sounds like it has a negative connotation, but it's more than just a mom. We're home. It's a 24/7 round the clock job that never stops. Um, Prior to becoming a mom, I did work. I worked in the public sector, both at Sonoma State University, and then I worked as a federal employee for some time with Social Security. But after my first pregnancy, I quit and haven't looked back since. It's been going on for years now. So I'm just a mom. I'm home, just taking care of the kids, taking care of the house, taking care of my husband, and just really adapting to kind of this new life. Not new so much anymore, but every day is new, right? So
Yeah. Oh, honestly, no, it is new. I am literally learning every single day. I don't like my oldest just keeps getting older, and every single day is a first.
yeah, the oldest is crazy, right? Because it's always going to be the first
Hmm.
milestone for everything. Like the poor
Hmm.
second kid and third kid and any subsequent kid. It's just so inevitably true that your first is going to take up so much more time and attention because they're
Yeah.
going to be your first too for everything. And for the
Yeah.
second and third kid, it's like, okay, been there, done that.
Yeah. No, 100%. Um, so I love that, and I love what you said about how you're not just a mom, you're just a mom, but not just a mom. Um, I want you to take us back to your first birth with Amelia. So I'd love for you to share, like, what mindset did you go into having her, and then what helped you stay committed to the type of birth that you wanted, and then tell us a little bit more about what you were hoping for.
Yeah, so with Amelia, my oldest, she was born in January 2023, so she'll be 3 this coming January. And I always, from the moment I found out I was pregnant, I had this like natural instinct, like, oh, I need to learn as much as I possibly can. I felt like I wanted to give my body a fair chance to do things as intervention free as possible. And that was always just kind of naturally in my mind. I had no other thought about, "Oh, I'm so scared. I, um, wanna take an epidural or I wanna get a C-section." Not that I wasn't scared. Of course, those fears and nerves, were inevitable, but I knew that I needed to do something to kind of ease them and do my homework. So really, I just prepared as much as I could. When I was 5 weeks pregnant, I met with a midwife who came to my house, not associated with a hospital or anything. She had a birthing center over in Napa. And so that was my first, I guess, unofficial prenatal. I met with a few doulas here and there, but I was also insured by Kaiser at the time. So it was more financially efficient for us to receive care through Kaiser and we ultimately decided at birthing at Kaiser. But all that to
It's a
say,
local hospital,
yeah,
right?
local
Kaiser?
hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, here in Santa Rosa. I mean, they're all over California, but the one I went to was here in Santa Rosa. But all that to say, I met with a variety of providers and got a bunch of different perspectives aside from who my selected provider was at Kaiser. And I continued to do that throughout my pregnancy. I hired a doula about halfway through. So she was a huge help throughout the pregnancy. I had some prenatals with her. I also did a separate birth class with a separate doula who was not like my birth doula. But again, so doing all of that homework really kind of prepared nothing can quote unquote prepare you for birth, right? You just got to do it.
Hmm.
But it gave me an idea of what to expect. And when labor came around, it was pretty textbook. I had a very long, early labor for about a day and a half. Contractions were like 20 to 30 minutes apart for some time. So I kind of saw things coming. Active labor happened very, very quickly overnight within like 6 or 7 hours. And then transition got really fast. So everything sped up towards the end. But I wouldn't have known about those different stages had I not done so much preparation, I guess, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So it kind of all came together. Sorry, I lost track of your question a little bit. Let me look back at my
No,
notes
no, no.
here.
That's okay, that's okay. What mindset did you go into with that birth? Tell us what you wanted to have and then what happened.
Yeah, so again, my goal was always to go as intervention free as possible. And that's exactly what happened. So like I said, early labor was about a day and a half. And then once
Mhm.
I felt contractions kind of amping up, I felt like, this is go time. I called my doula, called my hospital, who both actually advised me not to go in at that time because my contractions were not close enough, I guess. I think they say come in at 3 to 4 minutes apart. And I think
Mhm.
I was still 6 to 7 minutes apart, but they were very intense. And I knew that I felt like I had to go. So I kind of just listened to my
Oh, wow.
body, and the hospital was like, well, if you show up and you're not dilated enough, we're going to send you home. Like that's just kind of standard policy. But I got there and I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. So I had labored at home the majority of the time, which again, I credit to kind of just knowing the process and stages of labor and how to
Mhm.
cope with them at home. I think had I not known all of those things, a lot of women just rush to the hospital at the first contraction or the first moment your water
Mhm.
breaks. And it's not always that quick and not always that necessary, right? Because
Right.
I can't remember who to credit for this, but I saw on Instagram one time, it was like, the first intervention, if you want an unmedicated birth or an intervention free birth, your first intervention, if you're birthing at a hospital, is leaving the house. Because once you head to the hospital and you enter the hospital, like
Whoa.
that's kind of just,
That's good.
you're at their mercy. They're going to
Yeah.
start, first thing they're going to do is check your cervix. And if you're not dilated enough, again, they might send you home. They might put you on Pitocin. They might
Mhm.
do a bunch of things depending on where you're at in labor, depending on how staffed they are, depending
That
on
is
how far
so
along you
good.
are in your pregnancy. So that's really
Or
the first
even
intervention is leaving.
even just the distractions, I think, would count as an intervention, because,
Right.
you hear so often, "Oh, I was laboring so well at home, and then I went to the hospital, and then everything stalled." It's
Yeah.
so hard to, keep the mental focus because a hospital is busy, and there are pings everywhere, and people rushing around, and, distractions everywhere, and
Yeah.
it's so hard to focus on labor and shut that out. So I hear all the time, "Oh, I went a little too early, and then things stalled." So good for you. That's awesome, but that is, the mic drop of the of the day.
Yeah, and, like, it's so true, like, once you get into the hospital, everything also is so much more accessible. It's like, "Oh, here, like, there's a solution." So, had I
Mhm,
maybe not been 9.5 centimeters when I walked in, if I was, got checked and I was 4 or 5 centimeters, I it could have been a mind game at that point, like, "Oh, I'm
mhm,
only 4 centimeters. I'm not that far along. Give me the
mm,
epidural or give me whatever it is. I'm
right,
already here."
right,
And all that to say, of course, everybody's birth story is so different. I'm speaking completely from my own experience, and I
totally.
had a very overall pleasant first birth and second birth for the most part. I'll get into that later. But it's hard to say what I would do if I wasn't as dilated as I was when I walked in. I think I got there
Mhm,
at 6 a.m. and she was born around 9 a.m. So I was really only in the hospital in transition and pushing for about 3 hours until she was born. So that was amazing. Um, and again, I really
wow,
just kind of credit that to knowing all the signs, having all the coping mechanisms at home. I would bounce on my ball. I used the comb. Husband was a huge support. That's another thing. My husband was involved in all of my birth prep too. He
mm,
he came to a few birth classes with me, met with my doula every time. He didn't come to every single prenatal at Kaiser, but he came to several. And so just him being in the know and being able to
yeah,
help me when you know, once you're in labor, especially active labor and transition, everything's a blur. You're not thinking as clearly, you just kind of black out.
mhm, mhm,
So having him be in the know and kind of guide me and tell me um, what's not tell me what's going on, but, just kind of
yeah,
be there for support is really important. So I
oh,
think having your
100%,
partner involved in your birth prep is super key as well.
yeah, and would you say your doula was a good decision? Was that pretty helpful too?
Definitely, especially for my first. I didn't have a doula with my second or my third, or with this one, I mean, but for the first, she was great. again, just getting that different perspective other than your hired provider, which again,
Yeah.
mine was, at a hospital.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. So then, yeah, let's get into the differences between your first and your second births. Like, what were some of the big differences? And then later we can get into kind of takeaways and things that you learned. But what are some of the differences between first and second?
Yeah, so I said in the beginning I had a little asterisk on unmedicated. With my second birth, I did take nitrous oxide. I think that's how you pronounce it, the laughing gas,
Huh.
which
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know. So it's not like taking the epidural or anything. A lot of people, when they hear unmedicated, they just assume like it means you didn't take the epidural, which is true. But there's other pain management techniques that aren't as necessarily risky as taking an epidural. And again, that goes all back to doing your homework, knowing your options, what's available in your hospital.
Hmm.
Um, so basically what the laughing gas is, it's a little mask that you put on and you inhale it and it's supposed to kind of like take the edge off for a second. It really didn't do anything for me. I hated it. And it made me nauseous. So I like took a couple of puffs and put it back.
Oh
So
no.
that's my little caveat. So it's like to be like accurate, it wasn't like 100% intervention for, again,
Oh,
when you're in the
I
hospital,
really
you
don't
have
think
these
that
things.
counts.
That's kind of, it's not like, counts or doesn't count or it's a
Yeah,
contest,
yeah.
but I just want to be accurate.
Cool. Well, and that's good to
But I
know
think,
about. I didn't even like know that that was a thing. I mean, maybe I knew, but
yeah,
it's not what your mind goes to when you think of, you typically just think of the epidural and that's it.
yeah, when you're talking about pain relief, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a number of things that different hospitals can offer, nitrous oxide being one of them. I think some hospitals offer like fentanyl, and there's like crazy things you can do aside from the epidural. So, but I think the most common pain relief, of course, is epidural. So, excuse me.
Can I ask you,
Yeah,
why did you not wanna get an epidural? Because I think a lot of people, sometimes I got judged a little bit of like, "Oh, you just don't want an epidural because you wanna look cool," and I'm like, "Absolutely
yeah,
not. I could not care less." It's actually because I am very not really okay with a needle going into my back. That freaks me out. I'm sure
yeah.
that they're trained and, a whole other list. You bounce back faster. That was a big one for me, like, in terms of physical recovery, like, being able to move around. But what are some of the things that made you not wanna get an epidural?
Uh, yeah, that's a good question. So, first of all, practically, I don't want a needle in my back either. I think the thought of that scares me more than birth itself, in a
Me
sense.
too.
Like,
Me
and
too.
the unknown like side effects. So that was one thing. And then, like I said in the beginning, I feel like our bodies are just innately designed for this, and I feel like
Mhm.
by you know you want to do yourself and your baby service by giving you guys a fair chance to really enjoy this experience.
Yeah, another reason I did not want an epidural personally was, I knew that I wanted to feel my body's, like, pain cues, right? I think of pain in the body as feedback. If your ankle hurts, you should probably stop running. If you have a sore throat, right? Like, grab a cough drop. Like, I think of pain and feelings as feedback on what I need to do. And so when I was thinking about, do I not want an epidural? It was a very quick, unquestionable no for me because I wanted to feel the pain to know what to do. And I'm glad I did because with my first, it ended up being really bad back labor. So I knew intuitively, my mind was like, it really hurts over here. Get into this position.
Right.
So I just wanted to like have those feedback cues. But yeah, ditto on what you said. I was just curious about that. Sorry.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, and I was just nervous about the risks. And again, because I was able to walk into the hospital 9.5 centimeters, I don't even think they give you an epidural that when you're that dilated. And if they do, I think it can actually make your labor stall and go backwards. So yeah, I just didn't want to mess with it.
So how did the rest of your second birth go with Alina?
So Alina's birth was great. Alina is my second. She'll be two in April. And excuse me, her birth was very fast. So from the first contraction to when she was born was about 7 hours. So much faster than Amelia's. The birth itself was great. She shot right out. Uh, but I had a really bad hemorrhage. I lost about 1.5 liters of blood. And what had happened was I had to rush to the OR and they had to like, they couldn't find the tear. Like, usually they can stitch you up right in the delivery room, but they needed a surgeon as opposed to a midwife. So the midwives couldn't do it. So they wheeled me out. And I remember being so upset because I was like, I just went through this unmedicated birth, like no pain meds, no epidural, like my baby's here, like I'm done. Like, why do I need to leave? So I was like a little argumentative with the staff. And again, I'm in a haze, like I just gave birth. I'm not totally there. But my husband was like, you need to go. Like, you lost so much blood. They can't find it. Like, you got to go. So that was a little, I don't want to say it was a little traumatic because I had to be away from my baby. I had held her
Mhm.
for maybe 5, 10 minutes and I was gone in the operating room for about an hour. And my husband stayed back with the baby. So I was totally alone. And what ended up happening was they had to give me what's called a spinal block, which is basically the same thing as an epidural. It numbs you from the waist down so that they can get in there and solve this hemorrhage. And I remember being so mad because I was like, again, just went through this completely unmedicated birth only to get this spinal block, basically equivalent to an epidural after the fact. So that was, I don't want to say annoying. Like it was, I don't know if it was preventable. I actually recently asked at a prenatal for this pregnancy if there's anything I can do to prevent that from happening again.
Mhm.
And basically, the way they explained it to me, it was just like a freak accident tear. Um, so that was a little like traumatic, but again, it was more postpartum, like immediately postpartum, as opposed to
Mhm.
the birth itself. But
Mhm.
otherwise, her birth was great. I was back in the delivery room, like I said, an hour later. So it was just a
Wow.
little hard immediately after.
Wow.
Um, and then I couldn't like walk or get up for 2 days because I was numb. And so that was a little irritating. But
Oh,
again, it
yeah.
wasn't due to the birth. Well, I mean, it
Right.
was, but it wasn't due to getting the
Yeah.
epidural on birth, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay, super interesting, but wild. Yeah, I don't know enough about that, but I would be curious to see, like, I guess what caused that or something, but, that's wild.
My guess is how fast she came out.
Mm,
It was, like I said, a very quick labor. And when my contractions started with her, they were about 4 to 5 minutes apart, like right off the bat. So yeah, it was just that's my guess is that it was just really fast.
totally. Totally. Well, cool. So my next question I want to ask, you can choose from either, but I'd love to ask if there was a moment in either birth where you really felt God's presence in a tangible way, like whether guiding you or calming you or giving you strength, or maybe not, because like honestly, like I'm not gonna
It's
lie,
all a blur. Yeah.
when I had my first, literally, I was just thinking, this hurts so badly, this hurts so bad. I was really bad, not great mindset in that one. But
Yeah.
is there anything that, like, stands out to you, either that or, like, maybe a lesson that you drew from it, something, like, that just, like, really you clung to faith-wise?
I think, not so much during birth itself because like you said, you're just like in so much pain and everything's a blur and it's loud and crazy and chaotic. But I think the moment the baby is born, everything stops. Like the pain goes away. The room is quiet for the most part, like with the exception of the baby cry. Like the pain and the chaos, it's in a moment, it's completely gone. And there's just like a peace about being connected to your baby from the outside. You know, they're laying on your chest, they're still connected to the umbilical cord. And I think that is really the calming, godlike presence
Mm.
of the moment or of the birth, not necessarily
Yeah.
it's the labor or the pushing or the contractions. At least from my experience, it was kind of
Yeah.
like as soon as they came out, and once, you know, it was just an immediate peace, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
That's so beautiful. That makes me think of, so right with my first, I just, like, didn't have the right mindset of reminding myself that, okay, this pain has a purpose, because you just get so in a daze of just, like, riding the contractions that I actually asked my husband like, pretty much all I wanted him to do for my second was just like, "Can you remind me when I'm in labor that I'm about to have a baby?" It sounds so silly, but he did. When I was
Yeah.
having my second, he would just remind me. He would say, "Hey, we're about to have our little Luke. We're about to have our baby." And, like, it would just sort of bring me back into focus, like, "Oh, I'm about to meet
Yeah.
a baby." That sounds so silly because 'cause you're literally birthing a baby, but you just it hurt, my mind was here, blah, 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 and that helped so much because it's true. Like, your pain has a purpose, everything you're going through, and sometimes our brain can just overwhelm with, like, "This hurts," as
Yeah,
opposed to, like, flipping that, getting that out of your mind, and being like, "We're about to meet a little human being." Like,
oh boy,
how cool.
oh
Okay,
boy.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, and then you're about to do it again. Like, you're about to
I
have
know.
3 under like, 3, 3 and under.
Yeah.
Wild. So let's shift into more of, like, your identity, because like, when we first met, one of the first things that I really remember admiring about you was how, like, rock solid you are in what you said when you first introed. Like, you are not just a mom, you are just a mom. Like, you are a mom who has a very full plate. It is such a full job. It is the most demanding in a beautiful way and dedicated and 24/7 job. And I just remember really admiring how you were not insecure in that. Because I think in today's society, right now, that is something under attack where it's like, oh, we're just a stay at home mom. Like, you must eat cookies all day. Like, oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So, but I remember you were just so solid in your identity in that, that like nothing could sway you. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. How has becoming a mom shaped your identity? And what helps you stay grounded in the purpose of this season of like the messy and the busy and whatever? So, how has becoming a mom shaped your identity, and what helps you stay grounded in your purpose right now?
Yes, so both amazing questions. So it's a hot mess. Like if I'm being completely honest with you, it's not easy. We survive, day to day. I think it's really hard, especially in today's society. There's almost like an expectation that even moms should be doing something more than being a mom. Like you should have a side hustle, or you should have a part-time job, or you should be on Instagram trying to promote something or whatever it is, which are all great and fine things, but it's not necessarily for everyone. And
Mhm.
so that's why I laugh at like just a mom. Like being just a mom and focusing on simply your home and your kids is
Mhm.
totally enough. And it sounds kind of like trad wifey and traditional, and that's fine. Like that's kind of in a sense for me what works for me, and that
Mhm.
is actually what helps me stay grounded, is not giving into the pressure that I need to do more than just tend to my kids,
Mhm.
because it is such a full-time job. There's always something to do. There's always more energy that can be given, even when
Mhm.
I feel like I can't. So I think almost just like lowering my expectations. And I think that's hard for so many women, especially it was hard for me with my first, who have worked in the past.
Mhm.
We went to college, we worked all throughout like our 20s. Like when I was in college, it was all about like the boss babe culture and being an independent woman. And, now I am 31, and it's like, well, we're taking a step back from all of that now. I'm not
Mhm.
working. I'm not independent. I'm home tending to like two, almost three, like little, you know, little kids. And
Mhm.
so it's a lot of unlearning what we've kind of been trained to do our whole lives, at least for modern day society perspective. You graduate high school, it's like, what do you want to major in? What do you want to work as? Where are you going to intern?
Mhm.
The conversations when we're younger aren't always about becoming a mom or becoming a wife.
Right.
So it's such a lifestyle transition. And I think that's hard for a lot of women to let go, and understandably so. It is a
Yeah.
conflict, and it's not to negate or take away from any women who do work and who do it all. I think that's like beautiful, and everybody has their own flow and their own ambitions and what works
Mhm.
for them in their household. For me, I'm very much one or the other. And I feel that there will always be a time for me to work in the future
Mhm.
or do
Mhm.
other kind of like ventures. And what I'm doing right now with 303 is very much a temporary season. And as hard as it is and as chaotic as it is, I know that it's also not forever. So I'm really
Right.
trying to lean into that and give myself grace and simply be like just that mom, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, that's so good. A couple things I want to pull out about what you said. I like how you said that, yeah, the season is so fleeting. And I kind of have to take it on faith. I've had enough people who are old and gray say, hey, Brigitte, you better soak this in because it's going to fly by. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah.
But I really have to remind myself of that because when you're in it, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like, oh
No.
my gosh, I'm going to be changing diapers for forever. I'm missing out on sleeping through the night or like whatever people do who don't have babies and toddlers, right? Like so like reminding yourself of that routinely that it really is going to fly by. Like I've had elderly people stop me in the grocery store who I don't even know and they say, "Hey, you better soak this in." So for people to get that outside of their comfort zone, like I think that there's something to that. So I like how you said that and then um I also like how you said that like it really is individual. Something my mom always said to me growing up, some great advice she would always give me is she would say, "Hey, no matter what, something's always got to give." And that's something that I kind of cling to because I balance a couple different things. Like, but motherhood is like marriage and motherhood, number one for me personally, like you said, very personal. But I'm always thinking about, okay, let me do a priority check. Because if those aren't in the right places, then something's out of whack and I need to knock something back a couple. And that could be, fitness, like hobbies, whatever. It doesn't have to be a side hustle or, passion projects or whatever. It can be, I mean, our
Totally.
plates are full. There are all sorts of different things, but something always has to give, is what she would tell me. And so it's like for me, it's a constant check on like, okay, where are my priorities? I need to realign. I need to make sure that I am doing my number one, two, three first.
Mhm.
God drew kids and then figuring out the rest for me personally. And so I always think about that. Yeah, something always has to give. It might look like the people on Instagram who are killing it have it all together, but like they're missing out on something. We just don't see it.
Oh my gosh. I love that you mentioned that because, sorry to interrupt. With
No.
my first, I just remember, so not to get too much into postpartum because that's a whole different conversation, but I did have some pretty bad postpartum blues with my first pregnancy. And I remember being
Mm,
on Instagram and seeing these influencers and people with lots of followers who were young new moms doing their whole Instagram thing and making reels like in the hospital and with newborns and all. And they're all glammed up and they've got the makeup and the outfits and the cute matching outfits. And I was just raging. I was like,
mm,
this is not real. This is,
yeah.
I wanted to, you're doom scrolling while you're nursing at 3 a.m. and just seeing these unrealistic, glamorous, beautiful, lively moms. And it, it's such a disservice to new moms because that's not who, these first time moms who are looking for
Hmm.
help should go and look to. It's so dirty and so messy and so
Yeah.
chaotic and so depressing at times. And of course, that's not always going to be shown on Instagram. There are a handful of influencers who do go on and talk about it. But at the end of the day, Instagram is just so saturated with information, both good and bad, that it's really hard to pull and source like who to follow and who should I trust and whose
Mm,
values aligned with mine. So it's totally a double-edged sword. So I just have to throw
yeah.
that in about Instagram because I
No.
remember just being really frustrated with mom influencers after my first
Yeah.
pregnancy because I'm like, you guys are not real. You're all either rich and have nannies or you're way in over your head and
Yeah.
like are actually probably really depressed inside or really struggling, which is sad,
Yeah. Yeah.
if that makes sense. So
No, I
that's
had
my
the
that's
exact
my little
same.
tidbit. Yeah.
I definitely had the same thing. I think that I think what I would say to that is I think as a mom, it's more important now in this season than ever before to be extremely rooted in your identity, who you are, and be okay with that, your values and your priorities. Because, like, I don't know how to say this without being like really disrespectful. But, like, I remember seeing stuff like that on Instagram, and it was Drew who at first would remind me, he's like, "You should not compare to that because you don't know what their priorities are. Maybe they chose not to nurse, so they have more free time." Like, that right, like, getting really into the weeds, or maybe they chose not to do this or whatever, so they can do
Yeah.
this. And I'm like, "Okay, that's right." But that's another thing that's so hard about motherhood is a lot of those things are invisible.
Yeah.
People don't know in the world, like, how many times I've gotten up with my baby at night, right? Like how many times you've woken up to feed and nurture a baby that's not like, oh, wow, Noor, look at this on her resume, right? So much of it
Yeah.
is invisible. You're feeding food that gets eaten and goes away. You're doing laundry that gets dirty again. You're cleaning a kitchen that gets dirty again. So much of it is invisible. And I do remember again sorry, my husband really whips me into shape. Like he is my mindset go-to guru. Um, I'm very grateful for that. He loves the Lord, so he really sets me straight very well. But again, I remember a conversation where he was like, "Why do you care about those people on Instagram? Why do you care that you're seen?" And he pointed out in me, he's like, "Hey, that's pride." So I think another thing is again being okay and being humble about, like, who you are and not having this, like, prideful sense of like, "Oh, I have to show what I'm doing," but it's hard because you're coming
Yeah.
from a world where it's like, "I show what I'm doing at work. I show up every day. I perform. You get praised." And then you become a mom, and it's just like your whole world is flipped upside down. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
going off my rocker, but I feel like I don't know if any of that
No, that
resonates with
totally
you.
makes sense because, when you are in work or in school, there's always like a tangible reward to what you're doing. And in
Yeah.
motherhood, it's not always a tangible reward, or at least it's not as immediate of a reward.
Mhm.
And maybe through Instagram, a lot of moms, including myself, even I'm guilty of feeling like by posting or showing what I'm doing, that's a reward. Like, look at me, I'm doing something right. And I'm
Mm.
not saying that's true to be of everyone. Like, we can get into the topic of social media as a whole and, people who post their whole lives on there and this and that. And again, I'm guilty of it too. But I think it's important to just take a step back and put the phone down, and you don't have to take the picture or you don't have to
Mhm.
get the milestone. Just like be in it and be more present.
Mhm.
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to like myself and everyone.
Oh, I'm talking
Um,
to me too.
like, but you know what I mean? It's really distracting and it's really hard. And again, that's just kind of the way our society is set up. But on the flip side, it is a double-edged sword. It's not always bad because Instagram and social media and the internet also allows us to connect with other like-minded and aligned individuals. I mean, that's how we met through the
Yeah.
Facebook group. So
Mhm.
it's a modern way to kind of finding that village. It's how I
Mhm.
found a lot of birthday pages and got really into the birth space. I started following a few different communities and weeding out, people who weren't necessarily aligned with me. And kind of now 3 pregnancies later, I have a pretty solid feed of like what I want to see.
Right.
Do I need it? And do I need to, I'm not necessarily influenced by every single post I see, but it's just, good content to consume that's like aligned with what my
Right.
values are, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Oh,
So it's a
totally.
balance. It's really hard in today's, world to kind of put the phone down, but also like enjoy it when it's appropriate. So again, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but that's kind of my 2 cents.
No,
It's not always what it seems.
I agree. Takes a lot of prep and a lot of grace and a lot of mental discipline. Um, I love that. But hey, you have all of this ready to go for the third. Like you're ready to rock and roll. I would love to ask you about your third birth. Which is right around the corner. I'm really excited for you, but I would love to ask, like, as you prepare for this upcoming birth, like, is there anything you're doing differently? Like, practically speaking, or like spiritually or mentally or preparation, anything you're doing differently?
So this birth has been very similar to my second birth. Compared to my first birth, everything is different, right? Your first birth, you're the
Mhm.
most in tune, you're the most focused, you're so excited and you're paying attention to all the milestones. You have the time and the energy to do all of the preparation, get the nursery ready, get, all your birth classes in order. With your second and third and every subsequent pregnancy, you're just chasing toddlers. So it's realistically and practically, it's not like the first. But as I just had like a breakdown the other day because I was like, oh, it's 2 months away from my due date, and I literally haven't done anything for this child. Like I don't even have clothes for him because it's our first boy. I have 2 girls. I'm like, I don't have any boys stuff. Like we don't even have a spare we have a guest room, but I'm like, there's a bed in there. There's not even any space for his clothes. So I'm really had to like give myself a reality check, especially with the
Mhm.
holidays coming up and stuff. We've got so much going on. So is it different? Yes, it's different in the sense that I'm not paying attention as much. I think that's inevitable with subsequent pregnancies, but I do appreciate conversations like this because it came at a good time for me because I'm talking about my birth stories. It's almost like I'm talking to myself. Like I know this is
Mm.
kind of geared towards first time moms, but I could use this refresher as well as I head
Oh
into
my
my third
gosh.
pregnancy. So,
Life is so wild. Before I had my second, I was like, wait a second. What do I do again?
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
but I mean, practically other things that I'm doing, I've picked up a few books, most of which I've read before, but kind of just like refreshing through a few materials that I read with my first, just
Do
trying
you
to
mind
get back
sharing
in
them?
that mindset. Yeah, so I'm doing, or excuse me, reading The Guide to Childbirth by Ina May. Excuse me, that's her name,
Will
right? Ina May?
Link. Yeah.
Let me
Anime, I don't know, but
yeah,
yeah, the
Ina,
childbirth,
Ina.
yeah.
And that was phenomenal. So I read that one in full with my first. And basically the way the book is set up is the first half is just birth stories. She's like a one of the most famous midwives, I believe, in the country.
Mhm.
I think she worked mainly in like the 70s and 80s. Have you read her book or
Mhm.
any of her book? Yeah. And so the first half is just like a collective of birth stories. And then the second half is more of just like a guide to childbirth.
Mhm.
And she really emphasizes how important it is to listen to other women's birth stories. And I think that
Mm,
was very helpful in my first because there's just such a variety. So refreshing on that. The other one I started, but I haven't finished, is the Guide to Childbirth by Carson Mayer, I think is her name. I think she's a
cool.
doula in LA. And she has like a week by week kind of progression of pregnancy. So right now we're on week 32 on Monday.
That's
So just
creative.
kind of refreshing up on some, some old things, but otherwise just kind of waiting. I'm gonna have 2 January babies, but I think the fun thing about having a January baby, at first I was always stressed out because of the holidays, but I feel like I'm going into hibernation, and it kind of helps because,
Mm,
like, the weather's getting colder, it's getting dark earlier. I would have less motivation to go out and do stuff, like, pregnant or not, but now that I'm
mm.
pregnant, it's like, "Well, I'm just gonna hide in my house like a little
Yeah,
bear. We're all gonna hunker down, me and my kids, like, and we're gonna stay here all winter until this baby comes out. And the baby's
mhm.
gonna come in the winter. And then by the time the baby is like 3 or 4 months old, it'll be springtime and we can all emerge again.
It's
So that's kind of
perfect.
like my mindset.
No, that's
Yeah.
perfect. Gosh, this is awesome. Do you have anything else to share? Like if you were again like sitting across the table at a coffee shop, what from like a woman about to have her first, let's say, like is there anything else that you would share to encourage her?
So
Sorry,
I think
that's a
like
curveball.
no, it's okay. I think like the obvious thing I want to say is like, take a birth class, do your homework, read a book, like all of the logistic things that you can do to prepare,
Mhm.
which I think any first time mom should do. But I think deeper than that, like I said earlier, I think just really trusting your body and giving your body a chance. I think there's two groups of women. There's women who are open to trying to do things as intervention free as possible. And then there's women who prematurely or proactively make a decision that they want to get an epidural or schedule a C-section or an induction,
Mhm.
which again, to each their own. Like if you're one of those women, then I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the women who are a little bit more aligned with you and I, who are like, I want
Mhm.
to do this as unmedicated as possible.
Mhm.
And that's not to say that every woman who wants that is going to get that. It's so much easier said than done, right? I was really
Yeah.
fortunate to have two experiences that put me in a position to go unmedicated. Some women, might have really day long labors that are super intense with very little progression and they're in so much pain and they feel like an epidural is the only relief for them.
Yeah.
Um, and that's totally fine. It's your birth and you're making an informed decision.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is that you're making the informed decision and you understand why you're making that decision. It's not simply out of fear. You're doing it because you've exhausted all of your options,
I love that. No
if that
fear-based
makes sense.
decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So many women, like the moment they find out they're pregnant, they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't give birth. Like I'm just going to get an epidural or I can't have anything coming out of me. Like I need a C-section. Like that is like very much a conversation for a
Yeah.
lot of women. And one, I think you're doing your body a disservice, your body and your baby by saying
Mhm.
that. And two, I think that, in my opinion, birth is the easiest part in a sense because
Mm.
once you get into postpartum and in the trenches of motherhood, it only keeps getting harder and harder from there. Birth is it's just the start. And motherhood as a whole is a sacrifice. And when you're choosing to become a mom and start a family, you're inevitably choosing to sacrifice a lot of things, whether it's sacrifice your own time, your own health and fitness and your own goals, whether it's the sacrifice of pain during childbirth. it's really just starting with pregnancy and birth, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's a mindset that a lot of women should think about more. Again, everybody has different values and aligns differently. I'm speaking from my personal experience, but by giving your body a chance to kind of feel that pain, like you said, feel the pain points, feel how you can adjust in your labor and birth to make it more productive. Um, I think that, it's just really important to really get a fulfilling experience, but it's going to be painful. It's going to be hard. It's going to be chaotic. Like there's nothing you can do to avoid it. But I'm going
Yeah.
on a tangent here. But if,
No, that was so
yeah,
good. That was so good. I love that you included the part about not making fear-based decisions and just like betting on yourself. And also the
totally,
fact that it is technically like it is kind of like the bottom of the hill and it's kind of all uphill after that. But it's all
totally
good things. It's all growth things.
growth things.
And it's all things that are giving to another human being in a necessary way.
Yeah.
That's why Mother's Day exists. So,
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And thanks for just, yeah, sharing the birth stories, your honesty, your commitment to like really experience birth rather than fear it. I think that's really going to encourage a lot of moms. And I agree with you. I mean, there's a reason the number one like midwifery, like birth prep book, I think Ina May or however you pronounce her name, I think hers is like probably the most popular one. And half of it
Yeah.
is birth stories. So, what you just did is really a gift, whether they hope for, intervention free birth or want a more empowered experience, whatever. I think that anybody listening will walk away feeling more grounded, encouraged, and, just in tune with like the purpose that God has on the season of their life and on motherhood. So thank you for sharing. This was such a
Thank
gift.
you.
I'm really
Yeah.
excited for this to come out.
Thank you. I always love talking about this stuff. So, but I
Yeah.
apologize if I like rambled too much or went on any tangents.
Not
But
at all. Not at all. This was the best. Thanks so much, Nor.
yeah, and thank you. Like I said, I needed this as I prepare for my due date. So thank
I
you.
know. Baby number 3, let's
Mm.
go.
Yeah.